All right, guys, welcome to Herpetology, our penultimate class here in the classroom. Hard to believe, isn't it? A whole semester's worth of herpetology, and we still haven't seen any gosh darn mud puppies. Let's go ahead. I want to just walk us through what we're doing today. Will, actually, would you mind getting the door too? Sorry, I keep asking you for everything. And would you mind picking me up a sandwich downstairs while you're up? Yeah. All right, guys. So we're gonna. You notice I'm starting with the same title slide that I started with last week Wednesday because we didn't get to a lot of the play stuff that I thought, because we took advantage of the nice weather, went outside and found ourselves a beautiful water snake, which is great because we're not going to see anything moving today. Snakes are typically moving midwinter like this here in Ohio. I mean, the snakes that I'm talking about. Yeah. All right, so today's agenda looks like this. I've got some announcements for you. We're going to talk about a few more native Ohio frogs and learn a few more frog calls. And then we're going to talk about those play behavior videos that you watched last week. I want to debrief those. We're going to do a little group activity, and that transitions nicely into the reading for today on reptile cognition. And then that's it. I've got some reminders for you, and we'll wrap things up. So before I get into any of that, I want to make a few announcements. The first is that as far as I know at this moment, we are still on for tonight to see mud puppies. Ryan said the water is not too high. We are game. We're going to meet downstairs in the parking lot at 7:30 and depart from there. It was just looking at the forecast, and the rain is supposed to let up this afternoon, but then possibly pick up into this evening. So it might be a little bit rainy, but it's not supposed to be like stormy or anything. So it actually might not be terrible conditions, even though it's snowing. The important thing for us and for mud puppies is that the water level is not too high. And he said it seems fine right now. So we're good to go tonight. With that in mind, I want to just remind you, bring a flashlight, dress warmly. It's going to be chilly. It's going to be wet. So bring a raincoat, bring some warm clothes. I have some extra hats and stuff. And I have one extra raincoat. If anybody needs it, I'll have that ready to go. Couple quick questions. A few people, would like 2 people be available to meet at about 7:15 to help me get some waiters out to the vans? Anyone going tonight? Catherine, one other person? Lennon, great. And Judy too. Oh, actually, and Judy, if you can meet around that time to help with the vans too, that would be awesome. So Judy, Catherine, Lennon, I'll meet you guys at 7:15 or whoever else is around. But at least you 3 would be great. Let's meet. Let's plan a meeting just in this room, I guess, at 7:15. We'll get the waiters. Judy, now get the vans, and we'll be good to go from there. Otherwise, otherwise, what questions do you have for me about tonight's outing? Yeah, Claire. No, I didn't do that this time. I'm going to do it right now, though. Google form. How many of you are going tonight? 1, 2, Princeton, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, so we'll take both vans. Sure, just come tonight. And then remember, we're going to go Wednesday during class time as well. You're welcome to come to both if you want. Mm-hmm. Can we drive ourselves still? Or? Yeah, if you want to drive yourself, yes. But how do I want to coordinate that? If you're driving yourself, send a message in the group chat and just let me know. That way I can kind of know who to expect down there. That'd be the easiest way to do it. Yeah, someone can find that and send it. Yeah, or I can do it later. SK, go ahead. During the day. Well, the idea during the day is that he's going to have some that he traps from Tuesday night and save them for us. So the likelihood's pretty high that we will see mud puppies at the location where they live, but not necessarily swimming around free in the rocks. And then we'll also have a chance to see the habitat, talk to Ryan about the study and all that kind of stuff on Wednesday as well. So I think it'll still be it'll still be a worthwhile trip, even if we don't see any action. And we might not see any tonight. Who knows? That's part of what the risk is, I guess, the uncertainty, we'll say, with fieldwork stuff. But we will, I believe in. We're this class, like the one thing we're going to do this semester, gosh darn it, see some mud puppies. Chris? It's about 20 minutes. It's not far. It's just in Lewis Center at the foot of the dam. What's that reservoir called? Somebody that knows the area. Is it Elm Creek? Yeah, it's a spillway of the Elm Creek Dam. That's what it is. Yeah. Cool. Couple other announcements. The biology board. So we used to have a zoology board and a BOMI board, but now we're united. It's like Voltron. And they are really looking for folks to be on the biology board. So unless you're graduating this spring, please consider it. Nominations are due by this week, Wednesday. If you have questions, talk to Nebraska, who's not here. Yeah, consider that. It's actually an important student group. They do cool stuff with the department. So I encourage you all to check that out. Other important announcement. This guy giving a talk on Thursday. Don't miss it. It's going to be awesome. He's going to talk about his 2 experiments he conducted as part of his honors work. And there's going to be snacks. So check it out Thursday at 4:10 in the Science Center Science Center room 163 downstairs. Should be really great. We have high expectations for Princeton. No pressure. All right, I want to talk about 2 more native Ohio frogs for you to add to our growing list of native Ohio herps, of which we've really only scratched the surface this semester. And these are 2 tree frogs in the family Hylidae, confusingly called the gray tree frog and Cope's gray tree frog. First I want to talk about is Cope's gray tree frog, Hylochrysalis. This is kind of a dumb mnemonic device, but I remember that Cope starts with a C and Chrysalis starts with the C, so Cope's is Chrysalis, as by way of remembering which is which. And you'll see there's you'll see why that makes sense when I show you the gray tree frog. This is actually a picture I took myself 2 weeks ago at one of our salamander field sites. Here's another picture. I forget what that one's from. These are tree frogs, although they're not always found up in trees. You can find them on lower vegetation sometimes too, even on the ground. I found this guy actually under a board. And they have this gray and dark gray kind of mottled pattern, right? They have relatively smooth skin compared to something like, say, a cricket frog that has bumpy skin. And their color is pretty variable. Those dorsal blotches are only visible when the frog is gray. So sometimes you can see those blotches pretty clearly, and sometimes you can't. I don't have a good picture here, but the inside of their thighs can be a bright yellow too, as kind of flash color, which is kind of like a startle defense. When they jump, it exposes that bright color and confuses would-be predators. They can be, especially when they're young, they can be very green as well. So don't be confused if you see a greenish looking tree frog here in Ohio. It is not a green tree frog, but it is a gray tree frog. So this is a picture of a little guy. When they're in their first year or so, they can be this bright green, and sometimes that color can last a little bit longer. Now, what's really kind of interesting, we're just talking about you, Nebraska. You missed it. You missed your chance. Yeah. What's interesting about these guys is they look exactly identical to the other tree frog that I want to show you. I'm going to skip to that tree frog, and then I'll come back to this slide. The other tree frog is the gray tree frog, Hylochrysalis. You can see here an adult that's retained some of its green coloration. You can see another one here. These guys can be greenish or gray, and they have the exact same appearance, right, as Hylochrysalis. There's only 2 ways really to tell these guys apart without any additional information about where they're caught or anything. The first is their ploidy, so the number of each chromosomes that they have. Ohio versicolor is tetraploid, meaning they have 4 sets of chromosomes. So we humans are diploid. We have 2 sets of chromosomes. We generally get 1 set from mom, 1 set from dad. Boom, we're diploid. These guys are tetraploid, so they get 2 sets from mom, 2 sets from dad. Kind of cool. The Cope's gray tree frog, Hylochrysalis, on the other hand, is only diploid. So here we have these 2 coexisting species. They can be found in the same habitat that look superficially identical. One is diploid, one is tetraploid. So the only way to tell those guys apart would be to karyotype them, to get a tissue sample, sort all their chromosomes, and count it. The other way to tell them apart is their song, and I want to play that for you in just a second, or their call rather, I guess. Go ahead, Krista. These guys, so these guys can be green as adults. Hylochrysalis can be as well, but I think it's a little more rare. So you wouldn't be able to tell them apart based on the coloration, right? They're both pretty variable. The other way to tell them apart, other than being tetraploid versus diploid, is their call. So I'm going to play you the call of Hylochrysalis right here. Oops, sorry, I got to go over here and do it. We're going to do this. We're going to make this happen. Oh. So there you hear a bunch of them. It's this really kind of squawky call. And actually, what I want to play for you. I have it handy. Let me find just a single call. Might be a little better too. I have another file here. And I did put these calls up in Blackboard as well. Okay, what's this one?
Farther west in Monett, Missouri, the great tree frog is still readily recognizable as the same species.
There we go. Has this really kind of short, squawky call. Now, this is in contrast to the gray tree frog, which sounds like this. A little more sustained, a little higher pitch, a little more of a warble than a squawk, I would say. I love these guys. I hear these often in my neighborhood here in Delaware. They've been really quiet this year. I don't know if they're gone or if the weather's been lousy for them. Probably if things warm up in the next week or so, I'll hear them out. But these guys are here in town. And so, yep. Oops. Play this one more time. This is Hylochrysalis. That's it. Those are the only two frogs I'm going to talk about. Just add them to your list of frog calls and native Ohio amphibians. Any questions on these guys? Go ahead, Ethan.
You mentioned how the only way to tell the difference is through chromosomal testing.
Mm-hmm.
What's the usual method of taking a tissue sample to do some testing? Is it like a topo type thing?
I don't know. You get any tissue in the body, you'd have to karyotype them, which is kind of a pain in the butt. Like you have to stain the chromosomes and then sort them and count them. So it's not like an easy thing. It's not like something you can like get a tissue sample and do an assay on, like, you know, do a simple test on it or something. Like it's kind of more in depth than that. So yeah, I've never done any karyotyping, so I don't know exactly the lab techniques involved. But I don't see why you couldn't get it from any tissue, because all tissues are going to have those nucleated cells. Yeah. All right, so last week, Wednesday, you read two very short papers on play behavior in reptiles and a little bit of amphibians and fish as well. Crocodiles just want to have fun too, which is a story about a recent study that came out. And then this review by Gordon Burghardt, who's kind of like the grandfather of reptile cognition and play behavior. Recently just celebrated the 50th anniversary of his first publication. The dude is awesome, and he's still cranking stuff out. He's a pretty awesome guy. And so we read those two papers and you watched a bunch of videos on YouTube and decided you all completed the survey and kind of gave some details about, or give your opinion on whether or not that constituted play behavior. So I want to look at those videos together and debrief them a little bit. But first, what is play behavior? How are we going to define this? What criteria are we using? What constitutes play? Chase, go ahead.
not stressful situation.
Okay.
And that was what my-
Perfect. It's in a not stressful situation. Right? Because if it was you, if you're doing something, and this, think about this this definition is going to apply to all organisms, right? So think about if you're doing something when your like life is on the line, that's not a game, right? And I know people, you can get stressed and you can feel, you can feel a hormonal response to like the intensity of an athletic competition or something like that, but you're not actually going to die in a game of football or something like that. Good. What else constitutes play behavior? And you can go back, if you look in this article by Gordon Burghardt, Playing Fishes, Frogs, and Reptiles, he lays it out pretty explicitly. Go ahead, SK. Repeated, yep. And what does that mean? Think about for yourself, right? Think about a play behavior you engage in and think about what it means to that it's repeated. Like, give me an example. Not necessarily USK, but you can if you want. Like if I'm walking around and I see a ball on the ground and I kick it and just keep walking, is that play behavior? Probably not really. I mean, I'm just kicking a ball, like I'm not repeating it all. But if I kick a ball against the wall and it comes back to me, and I kick it at the wall again, it comes back to me. I kick it at the wall again, it comes back to me. Or Princeton and I both kick the ball back and forth, repeat it over and over again. Well, then that becomes play. Is
it just because it's like it's not just a response to something, it's you engaging with something?
That's a nice way to think of it. Yeah, you're not simply responding to an outside stimulus, but you're kind of almost creating your own stimulus, right? And think about when you play now, or maybe when you were a kid, you kind of play and do that stuff when you're bored, right? You just need something to do, and so you start like messing around with something. Good. So it's got to be repeated behavior that's not in a stressful situation. What else do we want to use to define this? Oh, and importantly, actually, let me add one caveat to being repeated. It also doesn't, it's explicitly not like pathological behaviors that are repeated. So like an animal, like you see, this happens a lot, for example, when tigers are in the zoo, they just pace back and forth. That's not playing. That's an animal feeling pent up and having a kind of psychological trauma due to being in a cage. That's different from playing, running around or chasing something or something like that. Go ahead, Athena.
There's probably not a goal in mind, so it's just kind of it's not to get a meal or anything.
Good. Yeah, that's great. So it doesn't have a goal in mind. I like the way you phrase that. And that's actually number 2 from the article here, is that it's different from serious behaviors. So I'm going to say not goal directed. Right? You're not actually trying to like accomplish something like a meal or something like that. So for example, like little, I don't know, tiger cubs play and wrestle with each other. They're not actually trying to eat each other, even though they're engaging in a lot of the same behaviors that they'll use for hunting when they're older. So it's a way to use those same behaviors in a way that's not necessarily, that was terrible handwriting. You guys can't read that. That's not necessarily working towards the same outcome that maybe they'll need when they're older. Good. It would be weird if the little tiger cubs were trying to actually eat each other. Sad. And also, one of the other criteria is that it's spontaneous, pleasurable, rewarding, or voluntary. So you're not being coerced into it. And I think that kind of fits with what you said, Athena. I'm going to put the word pleasurable in quotation marks here because that can mean different things in different taxa. We can interpret that differently, but just broadly, it's something that the animal is kind of voluntarily initiating. Has anyone taken a psychology class here that's looked at definitions of play or looked at this in more detail? I'm just curious if this is taught elsewhere. Have you covered this out? Oh, in animal behavior, you talked about play. Yeah, and bring in some of that knowledge. Drop us some knowledge from animal behavior. What did you talk about for play in there?
So talk about that stuff. I also talked about how play's really hard to define if it's like how stuff. But we also talked about different kinds of play, like hidden behavior, like object play, different forms of social play, different forms of play, like adaptations to all those.
Good. So you have object play when you're kicking a ball or something. Social play can be like tiger cubs wrestling or something like that. Or think about like playing peekaboo with a baby. Like that's total play for both parties involved, right? You're playing with the baby. It's kind of that social interaction. Good. What else? I saw another hint from animal behavior. Michaela, did you take animal behavior?
I did.
Yeah.
Pretty much that.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Good. It's nice to make that connection. Go ahead, Sid.
Oh, we also talked about in our seminar on domesticated animals.
Oh yeah.
It's pretty similar as well, but we talked about it specifically in terms of domestication.
So domesticated animal, are they more likely to play?
I'm gonna be honest with you, I took that class freshman year. and
Okay, don't remember.
at
Okay,
the time,
that's
but
okay.
it was really
came up.
interesting.
Yeah, so there's that, and I was curious to see if that's been covered in psychology classes too. So yeah, I think this is a good start. So it's not stressful, it's repeated, it's not goal directed. You're not trying to accomplish something important for your survival or reproduction or health or anything like that. You consider it broadly pleasurable. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and look at some of these videos, and I have a couple others for you as well, and decide if they're play behaviors.
Hey, come here, buddy. Come here, buddy.
I have to interject. I don't know why you would go to anybody that sounds like that, but anyway.
What you gonna come and see me?
He's bobbing his head as a
You hungry? Say goodbye.
back up for 1 second here. Here's a question for you. Why are we laughing? It's cute. Why is it cute?
Because the animal loves it. He loves it. He's so happy. He looks so happy.
Hey, come here, buddy.
Notice here real quick. Notice where he's sitting in the yard too, thinking about thermal biology. And notice he's right here in this patch of sun. And notice the guy said, "Oh, you're warm, right?" Well, that's not a mistake that he's warm. Okay, so why is it cute again? Sorry, repeat that one.
Because the iguana loves it. He's smiling. He's happy.
Mhm. How do you know? How do you know the iguana is happy?
Because he's like raising his head. He's letting the dude like touch him and everything.
Uh-huh.
Which what could mean that the animal wants to like guard down, which means he probably likes it.
Yeah.
Comfortable around it.
He voluntarily approached the guy, right? Yeah.
It also kind of looked like he was smiling at one
Yeah,
point.
he
Like he had his mouth
Yeah.
open, but no intention on like aggressively fighting or anything.
Mhm.
It was just smile.
Right. Yeah. It's hard to it's hard to interpret that as any kind of aggression, I think. Yeah. Go ahead.
I would like to add in, this isn't necessarily why we're like, responding to this here, but it may also be important to note that there wasn't any sort of like reward for the one-on-one other than like to socially interact.
Mhm.
Like as far as we know, we didn't have any kind of food or anything right
Right.
around. Like he called them and he wanted him just for like sort of.
Yeah. Let's assume that there's no like hidden, treat dangling or anything like that. Yeah. Go ahead, Chase.
I do wanna point out, I think this is something we talked about in animal behavior, is that, I don't know if this is what you're getting at or how to, I'll find out, but trying to like give animals emotions that we don't know if it's happy, it may look happy, but it's not actually.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we talked about. One thing is like, you have to be careful
Mhm.
with how you're like interpreting their like reactions and stuff.
Yeah, anthropomorphism.
Yeah, so- Anthropomorphism can be very dangerous, right? Because then we're ascribing we're kind of projecting the way that humans interact onto an animal. At the same time, we need to recognize that each of these animals has their own kind of inner world in a way. And so while we don't want to project our human ideas of what the world experience is like on the animal, we also want to give them the benefit of the doubt that they have their own experience and try to figure out kind of what that is. And a lot of this, and we're going to talk about this a little later, thinking about reptiles, the first thing to have engage in any kind of play behavior, you have to be given what you need to be healthy and happy first, right? Like if you're starving or you're kept at a really cold temperature where you can't really perform things very well, you're never going to engage in play behaviors. Same thing with humans. If you're miserable, if you're sick, like or I don't know, I'm trying to think of other circumstances, you're really hungry, you're not going to want to run around and play necessarily, right? And so we have to recognize that for a reptile, their own inner world is constructed in a way that's different from humans, but still exists in its own way. So do we consider this play behavior? How many of you, let's take a vote. Let's do voting. I love democracy. All right. How many of you would consider this play behavior? Raise your hands. Oh, no, this is voting. You don't when you go to the ballot box, you don't put half a check mark in it. What's that? This is. We are, just for funsies, we are. You're actually right. It's hard to describe that, but we're going to do it binary anyway. Who's voting yes for play? Show those hands. Okay, good. And who's voting no for play? That's pretty split in class. Interesting. So somebody that voted no, what criteria is not being met here?
I don't think we necessarily know it's not stressful or pleasurable because we're kind of anthropomorphizing a bit. Like that head bobbing could mean territorial display. It's very odd. And even when the lizard approached him, there was a moment where he wasn't sure if the lizard was going to bite. He took his hand away for a second.
Did he? I didn't even notice that. Yeah.
There was a quick moment where the lizard's mouth went towards him with it open and he went away.
Okay.
And that could be viewed as stressful if he's doing that.
Okay. Where else? It's SK. Go ahead.
One thing is,
So it's just like a conditioned response, like yeah, good. Go ahead, Jordan.
I think I would still consider it goal oriented, even if the goal is just getting affection from the guy. And it's also not, as far as we know, not necessarily ever repeated.
It is only.
Oh, let Jordan finish.
But he just like came up to him. It was like, I feel like his goal was still just like, that's my friend, like even if that's what was happening, if that is what was happening.
Right. I guess then the question is like, can the goal of social interaction be social interaction? That's an open question. I don't know. I don't know. I just want to be clear. I don't know the answers to any of this. Nobody's right and wrong. We're just kind of talking through this, and there's a lot of gray areas, like Ethan pointed out, like it's a continuum and we don't know a lot of the details, but I think it's interesting to think about that and think about how we're ascribing this cognitive capacity to reptiles. Let's get one more. Let's do the next video. Go ahead, Chase.
I thought it is play, but a reason that kind of makes me think it's not is because the whole voluntary thing, like he was just chilling out there in the sun, and then he got cold kind of over. He was like kind of coaxed in, and then it's voluntary that he like walked over. But he would not have normally walked over there had not been popped at or called over. Yeah. So like that's where it's like the voluntary fine line is I don't know which side it falls on.
I could see that in a way, he's almost giving up his resources, giving up this heat patch to come over in the cold to say hi. Good. Go ahead. I've got some more hands. We want to keep moving through the videos. Okay, we'll come back. We'll get you for the next one. Let's look at. Nope. Let's look at this one. It's a tegu, I think. Yeah.
20 years. That's good.
20 years. All right. I'm always curious to see like why they recommend different videos to me.
I have that. I have that in my recommended, and I really want to watch it.
It's so weird. Okay, is this play behavior? Tegu fetches the ball. Let's hear some voices we haven't heard. Sam, go ahead.
I think it is play behavior. And on my response thing, I will ask this for. I said like it seemed more like play behavior because not only does the lizard pursue the ball, which at first when I was watching it, I was like, oh, it could just be responding to emotion. But when it brings the ball back to the person filming,
Right.
It seems more like it's an active engagement with the activity.
Mhm.
And even though we don't get to see it, I think the implication there is that it's repeated. I don't necessarily think we should assume that it
Yeah.
is, but the implication.
I think for the sake of our discussion, we can assume that it's repeated, and otherwise it's just like one-off behavior. We can't say much. So let's just assume that this happens regularly with this animal. Yeah. Yeah. So it's fetching the ball and bringing it back, and that bringing it back is kind of key to indicate play behavior, because it could be like goal-directed behavior towards capturing prey, misdirected, obviously, but you know, that could be considered goal-oriented. But in this case, it's just bringing it back. It's getting it and bringing it back when it knows it's not food, apparently, anyway. Yeah, good. Alan, let's go ahead, and then Judy.
Consider it play because it basically, that's how my dog, I took it from the perspective of my pets, being that dogs, play. My dogs react the same way whenever I throw a ball like that, or like park for it, sort of like skittering stuff like that. And it was like, I don't know, that like, even though they're different species and like different groups of organisms, it's still like that similarity.
It's very, yeah, that initial like chuck here. Can we go back to this? Yeah, very much, very dog-like in that sense. Good, Judy, go ahead. Yeah, what do you think about that?
I would consider that place it's not getting anything from squeaking the ball. It's not like it's food, it's not chewing it, swallowing it. There's no ball there. It's just
Squeaking the ball. Yeah. Good, good. Ethan, I'll come back to you. Any other hands? Anyone who hasn't had a chance to speak up?
Kind of adding on to what you said about like, I had initial maybe like this is really like maybe it's a predatory response to emotion. But when it comes back out with the ball, it's hard. And then the second ball, you don't see it trying to oriented, so if you swallow it or anything, it doesn't look like it's trying to swallow it like an egg or something. It's not that same kind of response. And also that in combination with the squeaking, I think it might have.
And I would add to that, further in support of that, is that these guys are very in tune to their world via the olfactory senses. And let's assume that that ball doesn't smell like a rodent or something like that. That monitor lizard knows that it's not prey item based on the smell alone, you know, and that's getting into like, you know, how we experience the world versus a monitor lizard. Their world is much more olfactory oriented than ours is. And in this case, they're clearly going to know that that's not a rodent. Good. Ethan, go ahead.
I view this as more of just like an instinct response of just.
You're such a doubter.
This was the only one that I would say. I don't think so.
Just as chasing the ball. What about it bringing the ball back though?
I think that, like, I think you have to watch it for a long period of time. I think just if a lizard makes a short distance, holding something it just captured as like something that passed by, I think that, like, if it held it for a long time or brought it back to the owner, and again, repeated being the main thing here. But from what I see of it, it's more of like, if you throw something past a cat, it's gonna instincts kick in of like, that's a fast thing moving. That's kind of what he did there. 2 squeezes, and then he might have realized it's not a live thing or an egg.
Right.
And that's why it's just dragging it around.
So it's got, we need more repetition for you then.
More repetition and longer viewing time.
Okay, fair enough. All right, let's go on. I got a couple more here. This is the last one. I think I gave you 3 to look on your own. Is that right? Okay, this is the last of those 3. Oops, just kidding. This one you watched? Did you watch this one? Okay. This one's a little longer.
Wait for it. Holy. Backup time. 2, 3. think he's getting scared.
All right, what do you think about this one? How many vote for play? Yes. How many vote not play? Ooh, again, this is evenly split. This is great. Sam, you've got to make some decisions here.
In the original response, I said yes, it's definitely played.
Okay.
I'm watching like, oh no, it was wrong.
What changed your mind?
The way that they didn't really respond to the ball when it wasn't. Because when people around sort of stopped pushing the ball around, they would just stare at it or kind of just sit in front of it, not really activate. And so it seemed to me like maybe it was more just an emotion response.
Okay.
And there was a point where they're like, oh, maybe he's scared of it. So I don't know bearded dragon behavior, but if they were saying like, oh, we think he's probably scared, then maybe they know it's a stress response like that. So the stress is probably.
Okay, so it might be okay. Good thoughts there. Let me get Chloe because I didn't take yours before. Go ahead, Chloe.
I originally said yes, but now I'm saying no in the sense of I felt like it was a emotion response watching because at first I was like, well, he's not angry because like under his chin it's real light colored and bearded dragons are going to get really dark.
Did you say, sorry, Chloe, to interrupt, but did you say motion or emotion response? Motion. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, and so I originally was like, he must be happy because under his chin isn't really dark. But watching it back, he has his tail standing up at one point. I don't know what that means, but I thought that maybe that might be aggressive. And then when he opened his mouth and jumped at it, then I thought maybe it was like he thought it was like something coming at him. But also because bearded dragons are like known to be very like territorial and aggressive toward other beardies, or if you show them a mirror and stuff, they get like really angry and try to attack you. So I thought that maybe this is not behavior, but more like an aggressive response.
Yeah, and what I appreciate about what you said, and I don't know tons of details about bearded dragon behaviors, but we have to understand their social world before we can establish whether or not this is play. We don't really know. If we don't know how those animals interact with each other, if they're territorial, if there's intersexual conflict, any of that stuff, then it's really hard to know exactly what might be going on in the beardie's brain, right? Princeton is going to jump in too.
Sure. Well, I guess I do know a little bit about bearded dragon behavior since I've learned that. They're just goofballs. They are not very smart, and they will attack anything that is brightly colored, especially that ball being this very bright yellow color. They are just like food, and they will definitely try to eat anything. Like for instance, there's videos online of like people painting their nails like red or something, and the bearded dragon is trying to eat their fingers. So I really think this is more of a like, almost a food response than more of a like.
So we got to know, again, we got to know their diet in this case and how they respond to food items to really know whether or not it's goal directed, right? That's the key criteria we're thinking about here. McKenna, go ahead.
I do think it's play behavior. I know that the ball is reptile, but when it comes to like reptiles like olfactory senses, it would probably be able to identify whether or not it's food, and it went after the ball quite a few times. So maybe by then it realized like, oh, this isn't food, it's still going after it. And also I don't think it's like a aggressive response, just because like typically you would expect to see black bearding, which is where the throat usually they inflated a little bit and it turns a dark color. I don't know about the tail maybe connection. I have no idea what that might be. Might just be because he was moving quickly and he was moving his tail. So
Yeah, I kind of paused it here at the tail up. So tail moving does have important signaling in a lot of different lizard species. So for example, we looked at the curly tail lizard with the giant that was impacted with the giant, that's what I'm looking for, poop bolus. And those guys have like these different ways they socially communicate via their tails. I don't know with bearded dragons if they do that with their tails. I don't know of anything like that. Yeah.
I think it really was just like lifting it up because they're moving quickly.
Yeah, like a counterbalance kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, but I
Play. All right, Chase, and we'll go to one more.
Originally said it's play, and then watching it, I was like, oh, maybe it's not, because it's kind of like attacking, like we said before. Then I kind of went back to it is play, because at the end, the guy was like petting it. I feel like if it wasn't play, and it was like a serious, like it was trying to like attack it or eat the bowl or something, that he wouldn't have, or territorial, he would not have left the guy.
Like tolerated that. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I'm not sure. Again, you know, we got to get inside their reptile world. I've seen lots of hands. We're going to keep moving on to the next video here. I apologize for that. I've got one or two more I added to the repertoire. Oh, this one. It's a little bit of a not the best video angle, but just watch carefully, I guess. Some kind of map turtle. Looks like just a common map turtle. Is this Robin Williams? What's he doing in here? Oh, that's pretty random. Cool. And some boxing. This is great. All right. I'm curious to hear from some folks that haven't had a chance to talk in class today. What do you think? Play behavior? It's hard to see. You can't. Okay. So what he's doing, or what way I'm seeing, oops, sorry, wrong one, is that basically the turtle is like blowing out bubbles of his nares, and as they float up and get stuck on the surface, he's going and like catching them. And then he goes back down, he blows another one, and then he goes up and catches it. Like right there, you see? Watch.
That's what I thought he was saying. He was taking a little air and then blowing it up.
Here. But he's catching the bubbles, like he's not going, because they don't breathe. He won't open his mouth like that to breathe, right?
I don't know, just with like things like that, when there's no bubble on the surface, it's still grab it.
Yeah, he is making the bubbles himself. Yeah. All right, what do we think? Lennon, go ahead. And then Athena.
That might just be a reaction to like a brand new maybe seen before,
Mhm.
never seen before.
Mhm.
So it could just like be a genuine reaction, like, ooh, what's this? And it's gonna like, I don't think it's like intentional.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so he's just kind of responding to stimulus, right? Rather than like repeatedly interact. Okay, Athena, go ahead. What do you think? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so there's no, it's definitely not goal oriented. What's your argument? Good, Chris, go ahead. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Chris is pointing out that it's repeated and also that the turtle is creating the stimulus. It's not like responding necessarily to just something else in the world. He's like making it himself or herself. Looks like a little male. Mm-hmm. Good. Ethan?
I think especially if this was done like again on a separate occasion, this would be like I consider play. Because I think the turtle would learn. I mean, we think of reptiles as dumb, but they can learn like a response. Like if I do this, it's gonna create this. If I like this, I'm not gonna get anything from it. So after he was like 2 or 3, he would realize it's not food, but it's still people.
So you learn that he's not getting a reward, but still do it again repeatedly, not goal oriented, not stressful. All right,
I would say too, he doesn't have to push those bubbles out. It's not that.
yeah, that's true. Yeah, they don't normally do that.
Yeah.
All right, one more for you here. This one's 4 minutes long. We're not going to watch the whole thing. Is Yoshi the turtle from Mario Brothers? Dinosaur. No, he's not a turtle. Oh, yeah. Oh, that guy. Okay, I can picture him now. Yeah, and Bowser is a turtle, right? Yeah. Maybe we will watch this whole thing at this point. It's kind of interesting actually to watch him see where it goes, you know. He's cruising. He's so fast. Actually, pretty impressive sustained movement for a tortoise. I can't tell if it's the person's filming breathing or the tortoise breathing. I was thinking the same thing. Dang, they got a nice house.
No.
All right, play or not play? Really? Huh. Who are the doubters? Nebraska, why not play?
So I feel like it could be play because like he's doing it long enough
Uh-huh.
that it's like repetitive. But like you don't know if he does like get a reward for it. He does like bite at the ball sometimes.
Mhm.
So like that one's the reward.
Okay. Yeah, let's get Catherine. Go ahead. He's like not trying to eat it. Okay. Lisa, go ahead.
He's kind of going to any like to hit the ball at any point, like even if it's
He's kind of getting it back on. Okay, good. Go ahead, McKenna.
I was a little skeptical at first because turtles will try to hump literally anything. So I thought maybe that was what he was trying to do. But
Mhm.
like, when he gets it up against the wall, he just keeps pushing it. He doesn't really step on it.
Mhm.
So that kind of like really went out a little. But yeah, also if he was gonna get a reward for it, he ran around for a really long time without a reward, and that's like a lot of energy. for
Right.
Such a big turtle. So I mean, I don't
Yeah.
know, I feel like it would have to be a pretty substantial reward for all that money.
Yeah, if that was pretty sustained activity for a tortoise, right? Ethan, what do you think?
I think it's play. And I tried to keep a close eye on the head, but I never saw him bite once, at least from what I saw. And I thought possibly he could be trying to flip it, like, because he always retracts his head.
Mhm.
And even sometimes when he brought it out, never bit,
Mhm.
which I'd expect from a.
He tried to bite a couple times, I thought, did he?
I
I
thought
think
he just
so.
brought it out, but never.
Oh, he
actually
never,
bite it.
okay, okay.
Yeah, so he brought it out, I was comfortable enough with it.
Uh-huh.
And then when he got it up against the wall, I thought possibly he was trying to flip it like he would a rival male.
Mhm.
But I don't never seen a tortoise chase a rival male that long before.
Right.
Like, once it's gone.
They're-
they'll be like,
yeah.
okay, it's gone.
Yeah. Yeah, I this is the one where there's a really important piece of information. And that would be, is this a male or a female? Because if this is a male sulcata tortoise, I think 100% he's trying to hump the ball. Because I've seen male sulcata tortoises, and when they're looking, when they're in the mood, like anything is looking appealing.
You
And
think you would still chase it for that?
oh yeah. Yeah, and I think especially when he had it pinned against the wall, he was still kind of pushing it, kind of started to climb up on it a little bit, but then the woman picked him up. I think that was him trying to climb up on the ball. Although I'm saying that, I can't tell. I think it's a male based on the shape of the plastron here, but I'm not 100% sure.
My only bit of doubt
Mhm.
there is that even when he gets it up on the wall, he keeps pushing, like, it looks like he's pushing it with the part of his plastron
Mhm.
that pops out.
Yeah,
But he still doesn't really step up on it. He just keeps like
yeah,
poking it with his plastron.
yeah, that's true. He would, yeah, because what he'll do is he'll chase it and then he'll try to mount on top of it. And they'll go, I mean, they'll go all out on inanimate objects. I've seen a big, like, I don't know, probably 60-pound sulcata having a really good time with a garbage bag. Whatever, man. All right, Ethan, wrap it up for us.
I just want to add to that. Yeah, I think even when he was up against the wall, it was when he was pushing it with his platform. There was no kind of like trying to go up top of it, like his legs came up sometimes. Actually, because the force brought his whole body. It wasn't like he was going up over top of it,
Right.
so.
Yeah, I don't know. I always interpret that as him trying to like get up on top of it, but it's against the wall. So if he's trying to move, it's pretty ambiguous, right? But again, we got to think about being tortocentric, or whatever the word would be, tortopomorphic instead of anthropomorphic, and our thinking, and think about what the inner world of that tortoise is like, before we can describe these behaviors. It's a really cool discussion. What I want to do is pick it up after a short break and talk about reptile cognition, what we know, what we don't know, and what is yet to be learned. But let's take 5. So I'm looking at this clock is 3:05. Let's go till 3:10 on that clock and bring it back for discussion of the reading for today, and we'll wrap things up. All right, welcome back, everyone. Let's go ahead and keep moving today. Will, would you mind? I'm sorry, I'm just asking you for all the things today. If someone's observing us from an outside world, they might think you're engaging in play behavior with the door and the lights, because I've asked you to go back and forth. It's repeated. It's kind of goal oriented, I guess. It's not stressful, I hope. So, and if you can grab the door, that'd be great. Before I get started, let me just do a quick piece of information. This is Angelo. He's a photographer, I assume, as much. Probably safe assumption, right? Yeah, okay. They're looking to do some photographs for the university, and I had said today would be a good day to come in and photograph because we were going to be out catching snakes. This was a couple weeks ago when they asked. Obviously we're not, but he's going to come in and take some pictures. I apologize. I was supposed to announce this ahead of time to the class, and I just forgot about it last week. So if you have any concerns or anything, just let me know. We can figure it out. We're going to do a group activity here in a minute. It's going to be a little more exciting than me standing up here talking. Having said that, I'm going to stand up here and talk for a minute. So you read this paper on reptile cognition, but before we get into it, I want to talk about this guy. So this is a 1963 paper called On Aims and Methods of Ethology, bless you, written by Nico Tinbergen. And those of you who took animal behavior, I'm sure know this name very well, but he basically laid the foundation for our modern studies of animal behavior or ethology, right? He's a Dutch researcher. He worked primarily with birds, if I'm not mistaken, but did some other work as well. And this paper is important because in it, he laid out the 4 questions that we need to ask to understand animal behavior. And I'm talking about this now because this is referenced in this review paper you read on reptile cognition. And I want to just make sure we have a good understanding of it. And so what he laid out was kind of this grid, or this is one way to visualize it, that looks like this. On the columns, we have proximate and ultimate. Proximate meaning the thing that's happening very close to the behavior in time. Ultimate meaning the thing that happened a long time ago. And then we have this 2 other axes, contemporary and historical. So let's break this down a little bit. The first question we want to ask about behavior is what is causing it proximately? What is the immediate thing that's prompting an animal to act in a certain way? So let's give a quick example. Give me an example of a behavior in an animal, maybe in a reptile or amphibian. Diving in a sandfish skink. Good. So the proximate factor that's causing that sandfish skink to dive underground into the sand, I should say, is what? What's this external stimulus that's saying, hey, I better dive in the sand? Go ahead, Randy.
Like a predator nearby, or just like the need to go under.
Good, a predator nearby. I'm going to give a more specific example. Even when we go in our animal room, sometimes the skinks will be up on the surface, and as soon as they detect us coming at them, they dive down. So let's use that as our example. So the proximate cause there is it senses a predator, so it wants to get to safety, right? What is the utility in that behavior? Which is to say, in the long term, what benefit does it bring that organism to dive under the sand? Go ahead, Chase.
Their ability to be able to in the future reproduce and be offspring.
Yeah, it basically saves its life so it can survive and reproduce, right? In this case, it's pretty straightforward. It's getting underground so it can't get eaten. Good. Now, in historical but proximate sense, it's a little bit contradictory. I'm going to explain that more in a second. The other factor here in the proximate sense is ontogeny. And what that means is how did this behavior develop within an individual over time, over its lifespan? And so in a sandfish skink, basically from the time they hatch out, they're going to have this diving behavior. So it's not changing too much, but we can think of other behaviors that change pretty dramatically over an organism's lifetime. Think about mating behaviors, especially when an organism is a juvenile, they don't have any of those behaviors. Then you reach a certain point in your life where you develop those behaviors. So we want to think about what factors in that individual's development kind of creates the situation, creates that behavior. And then the other here in this corner, this is the one that I'm actually really interested in, is over evolutionary time, how has that behavior evolved? What selective pressures created that behavior? And then how does that behavior compare to other closely related species? So this is where we can think about convergent evolution versus synapomorphies of behaviors. And so I want to lay this out in a little more detail here. I'll get you in 1 second, Sid. Whoops, sorry. Where's my PowerPoint? There we go. So we can think about some specific questions related to these, kind of where these intersect. So we can think, for example, when we're thinking about what's immediately causing the behavior towards what benefit it's bringing the organism for that behavior, we can think about how the genotype, how genes might influence this behavioral phenotype, and then how that phenotype in turn of the animal, how this behavior maps onto its fitness. If we want to link the development of the individual to how that behavior evolved over time, we can think about things like developmental plasticity and how that might interact with evolutionary processes. We can also think about how the immediate cause of the behavior relates to its development within the individual. And then we can also think about how the evolutionary history influences how that behavior has utility for the organism now. So these are all overlapping is the takeaway here. But the big message is that there's these 4 questions that we want to ask about behavior. And those 4 questions are related to these 4 topics. Where's my chalk? Princess, my chalk in there. Will you toss that to me, please? That's close.
Yeah.
4 questions. 1 was, I'm going to just put these in my own words. Immediate cause. 2, fitness benefit. 3, ontogeny, how the behavior develops within an individual's lifetime. And 4, evolution. So any behavior we need to think about from these 4 kind of different but complementary perspectives. So this lays the foundation for how we're going to think about reptile cognition. Go ahead, Chloe. You can, sure. 1 is the immediate cause of the behavior. So in the case of our diving sandfish skink, it's the detection of a predator, and that's the response. Number 2 is the fitness benefit. How does that behavior benefit the individual? And so in this case, it prevents it from getting eaten, which is a good thing generally, unless you're a seed of a plant, then in which case you want to get eaten. That's why fruits evolved. It's kind of the opposite of predator avoidance. It attracts predators, so you do get eaten. That's a different story. Total digression there. As I said, that it's generally not good to get eaten. I was trying to think of counterexamples in my head, and then I realized that like fruit is the perfect counterexample. The whole point of fruit is that the seeds get eaten and then dispersed. Anyway, sorry. Ontogeny is the 3rd question, so that has to do with how that behavior develops within an individual's lifetime. And then evolution is thinking about it in a comparative sense. Over evolutionary time, how did that behavior come to be? What selective pressures created it? And how does that behavior compare to similar behaviors or responses in closely related species? Go ahead, Sid.
You said, I think the things for ontogeny,
Mhm.
is it lifetime development of an organism or is it species development?
It is within the lifetime of an individual. Ontogeny is you're from birth to death, basically, or yeah, immediate cause. Okay, so with that foundation in mind, I just wanted to just do that quick background so we have this foundation, we're all on the same footing here. Let's talk about reptile cognition. So you read this paper last week or sometime before today's class, reinstating reptiles from clueless creatures to esteemed models of cognitive biology. Wow, what a turnaround. Good for reptiles, right? And I mentioned this last week, that there's been a huge turnaround in the past 10 years in how we think about reptile cognition. And I want to talk a little bit more about this. So what I want to have you do is get into small groups of 3 or 4 people. Probably the most convenient thing is just the 4 people at like your end of the table. And I'd like you to take 10 minutes. And I want you to think about these questions that I gave you to think about before class today. What prompted this change in attitude towards reptile cognition? Why did it take until the 2010s basically for this to happen? And then like what's next for this research area? We're going to talk about this for 10 minutes, and then I'm going to give you another activity and we'll wrap things up for that'll be the last activity we do today. So take 10 minutes, talk about this with your group. I'll bounce around and see what's up. There we go. I'm going to put the lights back on.
It seems to me from reading it,
You guys
I'm actually just getting more. Understand more about what's whereas before you're relying on. I don't know how to like also make it work it. I feel like there's probably also like more fundamental shifts in testing for
I keep switching. It's the preferred. And then it's It was him that really accomplished it. Fire, slow, based off of assumptions or exercise. So
So one of the co-authors, Simon Beckles, was at Sickbee in Phoenix.
Really?
And I crossed paths for him for like a second, but I never really said anything. And like, he actually has done some really cool work with lizards and liquid too. Yeah.
I definitely recognize his name. I didn't know the reason.
Yeah, I know. His lab, the lab is in Belgium. It's like a functional morphology.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, he's with Raoul Van Dam.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you know, from the lab.
They were just trying to treat them like every other organism. In reality, this is the
yeah.
You know, you think of something that's like more. You think that it's not because I feel like there's such like a difference in this disconnect. Like, you know, something's like scaly, cold-blooded, lays eggs. There's such a difference that
I also,
like think
I
like
think I'm more
oh, that like a
thinking
maternal pair.
I didn't even know that that was.
Oh, that's like the breastfeeding.
Oh, yours was been done.
Yeah.
But we still need to do all.
So they're like, it's a debate like right now, it's even how, you know?
Really? Is that not like what's standard? It seems really small. You know.
That's why I'm like dead right now.
I also feel like there's this big like revolution in how we it's like traditionally you have thought about animals as like below and it's like while it started in it's more nuanced. We occupy
Got about 1 minute. All right, I'm going to bring it back here if I could. I heard some interesting discussions, which I appreciate. A little bit too much talk of hermit crabs, but whatever. All right, now you're going to take that information that you just shared and you're going to put it into action. So here's what you're going to do is I want you with your group to design an experiment. How would you test the cognitive capacity of a reptile or amphibian? This paper focuses on reptiles, but you could do amphibian if you want. And so think about what species you would use, why. Think about what hypothesis would you test. You know, think about learning behaviors. Think about social interactions. How would you test? What would you test and how would you test it? What would your experimental design be? Would you do observations in the wild? Would you manipulate animals in the lab? What are some important considerations? Basically, just brainstorm. Don't worry about logistical constraints. If you want to do this on American alligators and you need, 500,000 gallon tanks to do them in, you got it. Like this is imagination world. So go for it. But I want to know what experiment you would design working as a group. And your goal here is to present a 1 to 2 minute presentation for the class, describing the experiment in which members of your group act out the experiment. So I want to see people in the role of the reptiles or amphibians demonstrating, like if you're going to teach a snake how to navigate a maze, I want to see someone being the snake. I'll be honest, at this point in the semester, I just want to be entertained. And this is a great way to do it. So we're going to do a very short presentation. You're not going to come up here and stand in front of the class. You're going to be where you are, use the classroom and move around and kind of demonstrate, all right, if we're going to teach a snake how to use a maze, what's at the end of the maze? And then, Princeton's going to be the snake navigating the maze and finding the prey item or finding the mate or whatever snake Princeton finds at the end of the maze. Just show us how it works in the classroom. Engage us and make it fun. It's a minute long, but I really want you to think about how you're going to test this cognitive ability in a reptile or amphibian. This is going to be, I'm going to give you another 10 minutes and then we're going to demonstrate this. That should take us right to the end of class. We should be a little bit early even. Any questions? I am actually not even doing that. Like I said, I want to be, I want to be entertained. There we go, 10 minutes. Sorry, Princeton, I didn't mean to make you into snake Princeton. Brainstorm.
Stitch together.
Try running the code. Not the doctor's Yeah, now that I shoot it. Oh, that's good.
And then I eat you. Yeah. Like, do like a.
Yeah, use whatever you want. Yeah. How you guys doing? What do you think? Oh, very reptile
That's where we haven't just got started.
What are you testing?
Three trials going on. 4, 3, 2, and 1, and then 1, 0.
So how are we gonna show the difference?
Actually, that's perfect in this room because I'm like, no one have access to. And I feel like I pretend to.
So then even when you move to a certain location, you'll be the same spot. Yes. Since we're focusing on this is what
How are you guys doing?
And then you can choose the one that's left. You get 3 items, and it will do 3 trials. 3 or 4.
What will be like? All right, you got about 1 minute left.
I don't think you use it.
Yeah,
All right, let's bring this back. I note that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 groups, and we've got about 15 minutes left of class. I want to make sure we can get through this. So we're going to have to really be on your game. So let's just go through and see what you got. I know Nebraska and her group asked to go first. So you guys go for it. Let's do it.
Do you want us to tell us about it and then act it out? Or
Explain what the experiment is. Explain these questions briefly, and then kind of demonstrate what the experimental design will be through improv theater.
Right. Okay, so our species that we're looking at is the common wall lizard, but our predator is a T-Rex.
Okay.
And our hypothesis is that the common wall lizard has the cognitive ability to hide from predators and not hide from the things.
Mm-hmm.
And do you want us to tell you about our design?
Whatever is more efficient and makes more sense, right? If you need to explain things first, go for it. If you want to just demonstrate it, that's great. Just yeah, go for it.
I'm a safe space for the common wall lizard. Yeah, I'm a wall. Okay. Oh, and you're a T-Rex. Yeah, I'm a T-Rex. We're a common wall lizard. Yeah,
Okay.
you're a lizard.
Okay.
Wait, I need to be like behind you. Yeah, so we have 2 different trials. One is with the common wall lizard and another one is with the T-Rex. So here's the T-Rex one first. She was safe. Yeah, I'm done.
Okay.
I'm in safe now.
Okay. And now the idea here is that the wall lizard isn't running to safety with another wall lizard.
Right.
All right. Very cool. Give it up for the first group. Good job, guys. So learning predator specificity, I guess, right? Or danger level.
Yeah.
Cool.
Recognizing.
Right. Okay. Right on. Thank you. Great job, guys. Lennon and Company. Why don't we just go around the room this way? All right. Should we come back to you? I feel like that should be a good meme, a picture of Jordan and just like, I'm the heat lamp, damn it. All right, next group, go.
So our species of study is the Argentine black and white tegu, and our hypothesis is that they can be colored. To get a certain stimulus, the motivator is the light source. Let's see, so they can press a blue button for a nighttime heat lamp, so kind of a lower intensity heat lamp, yellow for no heat, and red for actual experiment, these would be on the ground, so they can push it with the romance. Okay. Those are taken. So he pushes the red button and he gets a win. He pushes the yellow and he doesn't get one. Pushes the blue, he gets a partial intensity, he wins. Great. Were there any questions?
Good. No, we can't answer questions. That's fine. Discrimination and integrity. Let's have Catherine and group go next.
Okay, so we wanted to look at, we just chose generally like crocodiles. We wanted to, because they're so like vicious, like what does play look like in them? So looking at that, we wanted to test what, like, sort of take just an observation approach to it. Before we introduce objects, then we would introduce objects that they normally find in, and then objects that are.
SK, sorry, what was your species again? Crocodile. Okay, gotcha.
So this is just crocodile.
Yeah.
Natural habitat. Without anything. And then we introduce an object that we expect that they would interact with it automatically.
So testing its reaction to different kinds of objects.
Yeah. And we think that they would probably be cautious about it at first, but once it's in there long enough, they might actually play with it and push
Well, what would be cool is to do that and see if it learns a red ball to play with, and then next time we introduce a red ball, see if it like knows right away, like if it remembers, like, hey, this Catherine ball was really fun. Cool, great job, guys. Good job. Object discrimination and learning, play learning. It's good. Ethan and company.
All right. We use the blackboard.
Yeah, we gotta erase anthropomorphism.
Sam, you want to go assume the position?
You got a point, Chase.
Actually, where should I be?
You can be down there, and then Chris, you can stay here until you get to the chair. Yeah, yeah. So we're doing in American alligators, understanding the concept of zero or nothingness. So for this experiment, it would make sense in the wild because alligators and crocodiles are ambush predators. They have to be able to discriminate between nothing and something, or like less or more. And zero is kind of like an abstract concept, higher level thinking. So what we'll be doing is we'll have 3 trials. And then Sam, or alligator, has a choice between 2 corridors, this one or this one. I don't know if I'm gonna stand like all the way back to the end.
I want to be all the way to the end.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So, and then this will be the numbers here. And then
If he picks the lower one, he gets a reward.
food item.
If he doesn't pick the lower one, he doesn't.
He's got no visual either on where the food item is.
So Chris is the food item?
Yes.
All right, so trial 1, go.
He gets the food item. And then we'll do it again. So he's learning that the lesser
Okay.
equals food. And we do this a couple times so you'd learn, but it's just summarization. Here he picks it, and then he gets the food item. And then finally, the concept of one or nothing. So we need to understand that nothing is less than one.
Nice. Awesome.
There you
Great
go.
job, guys. Great. I realize we're all cheering for Sam, but what does that say about how we feel about Chris? Just saying. All right, great job. Let's have Michaela and company. Guys up.
Thanks for the. This is pretty great.
You're great as a food item.
I love.
Yeah, I guess.
So basically, we're testing Podarcis moralis, seeing if it uses memory cognition to find its reward, which is in this case a heat lamp or warmth. Our heat lamp over there.
And so for like the experimental design, we set up a maze where like at one end, like they don't have any visual on it, but one end has like a heat lamp, whereas the other one has nothing. And we just like do a trial where they get to the heat lamp. And then the next time we would move the heat lamp and see if they went to that same spot and remembered if that was where the heat lamp was, or if they just like not actually found. Yeah, just like randomly were just choosing stuff. Lizards over there.
Oh, I think oh my god. Yay!
And now we would move the heat lamp, start Podarcis in the same spot and see if Podarcis used memory and just went back to the same corner.
No.
It's good though, smart for us.
Nope.
Yay! All right. That's when you have, if you learn where an object is or how to get to an object, and then you try to switch it, it's called reversal learning. So like, can you learn that, the heat lamp always to the left, and then you change it, how long does it take you to figure out, and then learn that it's on the other side? It doesn't work with that. It's cool. Last but not least, Sandy and company.
You were dead.
Oh boy. We're also doing wall lizards. We're doing spatial memory, so essentially we have a track that's made up of like natural things like rocks and sticks, and have them do that same maze over time to see if they get faster at it. To essentially just test spatial memory.
Here we have a wall lizard. And we have simulated prey that is a paintbrush.
So go.
Okay, we see she wanted. Does she go faster? Okay. Go.
Yeah, okay. Oh, you're actually trying to Was Sam Lizard faster?
Sam Lizard was not in fact faster.
Sam Lizard was not running the maze. So that's what they call cognitive capacity right there. So believe me, Sam. Good job, guys. Thank you.
The route was not.
All right, great job, everyone. I appreciate everyone's enthusiasm, willingness to participate. Idea here, I just wanted to get you free thinking about this. How do you actually test these ideas in reptiles? What are some important considerations? There's a lot more we could get into that we won't have time for today because class is about up. So I'm going to wrap things up here. I just want to remind you that primary literature assignment number 3 is due a week from today. I've been grading primary lit assignments number 2, and I have most of the classes done. Those grades are in Blackboard right now. Please note that I'm leaving comments on the rubric for you. So when you see your grade, you can also see how you scored in each aspect of the rubric. And then if in any place where you didn't get full points, I left comments as to why. Of course, let me know if you have questions. I'll continue working through those. I hope to get through everyone's in the next day or two for primary lit number 2. Otherwise, remember, class Wednesday is going to see mud puppies. If you go tonight, you're not required to go Wednesday. If you do go Wednesday, we will plan on meeting down in the parking lot right at 2:10. Please be prompt because we have a very limited time to get down there and get back. And we will go down and see mud puppies on Wednesday during class. Otherwise, we won't be back in this room until next week, Monday, which is our last class of the semester. Weather permitting, we will go look for snakes. I'd love to round out the semester with some snake outing, and we're good. With all of that in mind, I'm going to play for you one last video that's about 3 minutes long that is immensely entertaining. If you got to go, you can go, but you're going to miss this video. But class is officially over, but I'm just going to play this for all of our enjoyment. It is a frog and a lizard enjoying a meal together, kind of.